President Biden taking a back seat and letting one greasy-haired governor take the wheel of the Democratic clown car. Grandpa Joe was supposed to be the face of the party, but lately he's been more than happy to go to bed early and let the young whippersnappers do all the fighting. President Biden is avoiding press conferences like Hunter avoids stripper babies. But the White House insists that Joe's in control.
Is the administration trying to protect the president from our questions? Please answer that question.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So why the lack of any interaction in a formal setting to have a press conference?
I mean, the president takes shouted questions. Certainly, the president many times has stood in front of all of you, has taken questions on his own because he wanted to see what was all on your minds. It is also unprecedented that a president takes as many shouted questions as this president has.
And while Joe hides away, California Governor Gavin Newsom is stepping up to fill the Biden void. He's been ramping up appearances in red states and trying to attack Republicans.
I'd tell him to pack up and wait a few years and actually do some of the hard work, which actually includes governing, not just identity and culture war. Come back as a more seasoned and capable leader with a little humility, which, by the way, he can use a little of. No, I'm not running, and I know it's the perfunctory question we have to ask anytime someone puts out a PAC. I get it, but I'm turned out, know what else to do with the money, and this is a way of amplifying good people all across this country and supporting our president in the process.
All right, before I ask the question, that reminds me of a scene out of The Office. It's where Dwight, or anyways, trying to explain how great they are. And it's just, everybody can hear the ego talking. But Biden goes to Belfast for 5 days, won't take any questions. I bet you're steamed.
I am pretty steamed.
As a potato.
I think it's really ridiculous. And I also don't think that for 1 second that the press secretary believes that this is good communication from the president of the United States. Again, the president of the United States, the leader of the free world. And why are the reporters shouting questions? Well, that's because they never have an opportunity to actually ask him questions. And Al Roker, I'm sorry, that is not going to cut it. I think they also don't want him to take questions because I think they're afraid of what he's going to say. Mm-hmm. I've avoided saying that up to now, but I believe that the White House has correctly decided that the media is going to give them process stories that say, we wish you would really take more questions. But they prefer to have those negative stories than to deal with the consequences of the stories of what he might say on the other end. And also, what happened to return to norms? I thought we were returning to norms. The normal thing is when a president goes overseas, he does a press conference. One of the reasons you do that is because you are the leader of the free world. That's why you do it. And so they announced yesterday, they pre-announced that the president's going away for 5 days to Belfast, will not take any questions from the press. So at this point, why is the White House press corps going? Why would you go? Just let the pool camera go and don't starve him of attention. But the media, this morning on NPR, they had this report about him going to Belfast that was it was like, oh my gosh, he's going home and it's going to be better than John F. Kennedy. I couldn't believe what I was actually hearing because why would you pay as a news organization to go to Belfast to sit there for 5 days and to act like state TV? I think that they should band together and say, we will starve you of attention until you actually talk to us. I know that he's not wanting to announce he's running for president yet or if at all. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some serious questions, especially foreign policy questions. We are in dire straits at all of these leaks. What are we doing as a country? I would love to know from the president of the United States, not the White House press secretary and not the White House spokesperson for the National Security Council, what he actually thinks about the DOD leaks. There are so many questions that they could ask, and they're just absolutely giving him a pass.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like they're on autopilot, Judge, but I guess that's better than having him around.
Well, there's no question. I mean, if Joe Biden starts talking, they've got to come out and clean it up. And then the question is, who's cleaning it up? So it's the smart move on their part. But I got to tell you, this Gavin Newsom running around and he's building a national profile. And I remember it was a couple of months ago, he was a stronger, and this is in a national poll, he was a stronger 2024 presidential candidate than Kamala Harris. And he was rating very well in national politics. And, you know, for those of us who thought, oh, how dare he run these ads in Florida and go to these red states, it's benefiting him. It's definitely benefiting him. And so as he, you know, in spite of the fact, think about it, we came out of COVID in 2022. They made fun of him at the French Laundry. He was there, you know, and he was eating without a mask, and he's here without a mask. And yet the people in California love the guy. The state's a mess. People are leaving California. They can barely afford it there, and yet people like him. Why do they like him? I don't know. Maybe they just like the way he looks. And he's really taking on DeSantis, which means that he believes that Santis is going to be the guy. Who knows whether that's true? But I find it interesting that he says that even DeSantis should wait. You know, like he wants to run against someone like Trump. He doesn't want to run against DeSantis. But, yeah, he's a smart guy. With that slick back hair, he is shining a lot.
What do you think, Geraldo? Are you starting to maybe think maybe it might not be Biden?
Well, you know, I've changed my mind in the 2 minutes since we spoke off camera. I think Newsom and DeSantis will be returned to normalcy. That'll go back to regular politics where Trump isn't the colossus that alters the whole reality. I think right now, Trump's the only one. Trump can beat all the Republicans, and Biden's the only Democrat that can beat Trump. That's my feeling. So I think that that may be why that inertia is why there'll be a Biden-Trump redo. In terms of Gavin Newsom, though, and in a way, DeSantis also, although he's not quite as charming, Newsom is glib, he's eloquent, he's very handsome. He's very popular in California, and he's popular with a lot of guys that I know that have considerable resources, you know, high rollers that like him and say that he's definitely the future of the Democratic Party. I have no beef with him, nor DeSantis. I mean, I don't agree with DeSantis politics and some of the other stuff he does in schools and so forth. But I see that he is an admirable a person who has achieved a lot. And I think Newsom will be a good match for him, and we'll get back to politics as normal.
That's an interesting thing, Jesse. I don't know Gavin Newsom's track record at all. Like, I know California is wealthy and beautiful, and it's hard to leave. That has nothing to do with him. Yeah, he's not responsible for how good that supermodel looks. He's just dating it.
Yeah, you can't go to other governors and tell them to get their act together when he doesn't have his own act together.
Yeah, I don't know what he's done.
Well, I mean, look at California, look at San Francisco. We've known the stories about crime and sanctuary policies. Gavin Newsom's being groomed by the deep state to be the next president. This is what he's doing. He's going out to the entire country, and he's networking with donors. He's testing out lines. He's being asked questions by NBC, Comcast. And he has to deny that he's considering a presidential run. That's what you do when you're considering a presidential run. So he's staying loose in the bullpen while everybody kind of waits and see with Biden. Biden's always said, I'm running, but fate may get in the way. I've noticed this year, he doesn't have it. He didn't have it before, but this year he really doesn't have it. I haven't seen him smile this wide since he went to Belfast. He hasn't looked this alive ever. He touches down, and all of a sudden, the guy has a pulse. But then he gets back to this country, and he hangs out with the Easter Bunny and Al Roker.
It makes no sense.
It is a fraud, his presidency. And the press is in bed with Joe Biden, perpetuating this fraud. We say we have a free press. We don't. They're swallowed a gag ball. They're the ones that threw the gag ball down their own throats. You don't ask the president about the former president being indicted? You know what they asked him before he took off to Ireland? Who are you bringing to Ireland? So you can't pretend like you want to know what the president thinks, and then when you get a shot at the president, ask him who he's bringing. And you know who he's bringing? He's bringing Hunter. This is a family trip. And he's never had to answer about the laptop. He's never had to answer about lying about his family taking money from China. He hasn't ever answered why he popped a $20 balloon with a $2 million missile.
Right.
He hasn't been asked about the cartels. He hasn't been asked about Jack. And that's not fair to the American people.
What about Jack?
You know,
Good
just a
one, Geraldo.
correction, it's ball gag, not gag ball.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, because I don't want to get the letters from our, we have a large S&M demographic.
Is that what that reference
If that's the only mistake I'm going to make today, I'll take it.
It's a
good day.
it can be a big mistake in certain
right.
places.
But that Greg knows it is also very suspicious.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.